Ethan Cole was known across the business world as the man without mercy. He built his empire from scratch, clawing his way up from nothing. Every contract he signed, every rival he crushed, it all fed a hunger born from betrayal. The night his fiancée, Lily, left him for his best friend, something inside him froze permanently. Love had become weakness. Trust was a liability. His office reflected his heart. Minimalist, sleek, sterile. Even the air felt controlled. He didn't smile, didn't laugh, didn't believe. Emotions don't close deals, he often told his assistant, Grace, who had seen flashes of the man beneath that armor years ago. But on this stormy night, as Ethan signed off on another ruthless merger, a sudden noise broke the silence. A faint knock, soft but persistent. Grace opened the door slightly, confusion etched on her face. "Sir, there are 2 children here," she said hesitantly. Ethan's pen froze mid-signature. "Children? In my building? At midnight?" "They said they're looking for someone named Mr. Cole." He frowned. "Tell security too." But before he could finish, the door burst open. 2 tiny figures, a boy and a girl, no older than 6, stumbled in, drenched from the rain. The girl's small hand clutched a crumpled photo. The boy's lips trembled as he whispered, "Please, don't send us away." Ethan's brows knit together. His first instinct was irritation, but something about the girl's eyes, wide and desperate, stopped him cold. They looked familiar. Grace rushed to cover them with her scarf. "Sir, they are freezing. We can't just throw them out." Ethan hesitated, the words "not my problem" perched on his tongue, but for reasons he couldn't name, he didn't say them. Instead, he simply muttered, "Bring them some towels. And food." Grace blinked in disbelief, then hurried off. As the children shivered quietly near the heater, Ethan watched them from across the room, pretending to be indifferent. Yet every time the girl glanced at him, holding that photo tighter, something in his chest stirred. He finally asked, voice sharp, "Who told you to come here?" The boy pointed timidly at the photo. "Our mommy said you could help." He frowned, motioning for the picture. His breath caught when he turned it over. It was Lily. For a long moment, Ethan couldn't move. His pulse roared in his ears. Lily had children? And she'd sent them to him? "Where is your mother?" he asked, softer now. The girl's eyes filled. "She said she's gone to heaven." The paper trembled in Ethan's hand. Something cracked inside him, not loudly, not all at once, but just enough for light to slip through. If you were there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest, comment your answer below. And if words fail you, just hit like to prove that compassion still matters. Ethan sat back slowly, the city's hum outside fading into a distant echo. 4 years, he'd chased power to numb the sting of loss, to build walls no one could breach. But these tiny messengers of love lost and reborn, had walked straight through every defense he'd ever built. The girl handed him a folded note from her mother, edges worn and stained by tears. "She said to give this to you." Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he opened it. The ink had faded, but the words were unmistakable. "Ethan, if you're reading this, I'm sorry for leaving without goodbye. Life didn't go as we planned, but I never stopped believing there was still goodness in you. If you ever find my kids, please, don't let them grow up thinking love doesn't exist." Outside, thunder rolled again, but inside, for the first time in years, Ethan Cole couldn't tell if the wetness on his face was from the rain, or from something else entirely. Ethan couldn't stop staring at the letter. The edges shook slightly between his fingers, as if the paper itself carried the pulse of something long dead but not gone. Every word dug beneath his armor, scraping against guilt he thought he'd buried years ago. Grace stood quietly near the doorway, holding 2 cups of hot cocoa for the kids. Her eyes flicked from Ethan's face to the letter, but she didn't speak. She had worked with him long enough to know when silence said more than comfort ever could. The boy sipped his cocoa carefully, whispering to his sister, "Do you think he's really Mommy's friend?" The little girl nodded, looking at Ethan with a kind of innocent faith that burned through him more fiercely than any accusation could. He set the letter down and finally asked, "What are your names?" "I'm Emma," the girl said softly. "And this is Noah." "Emma and Noah," he repeated, as though trying the words on his tongue for the first time. How old are you? I'm 6. He's 5. Grace knelt beside them, wrapping a blanket around their shoulders. Where have you been living? Emma's voice trembled. We were at the shelter for a few days. Mommy said to find you if she didn't come back. Ethan's throat tightened. He could almost hear Lily's laugh again, that soft teasing tone she used whenever he buried himself too deep in work. One day, she'd once said, your heart will break in the right way, and that's when you'll finally understand love. He never thought she'd be right. Grace finally spoke, her tone gentle but firm. Sir, they can't stay at the office. Ethan looked up, still dazed. Then book a hotel. A good one. With your permission, I'll take them. No, he interrupted. I'll go. Grace's eyebrows lifted slightly, but she didn't argue. She simply handed him her umbrella, the faintest smile flickering. Maybe take the night off for once, Mr. Cole. He ignored her attempt at warmth, but inside, he could feel the walls beginning to bend. They rode the elevator down in silence, the hum of the machine echoing through the metallic cage. Noah clung to his sister's hand, Emma clutched the letter. As they stepped out into the cold rain, Ethan's driver opened the car door, startled at the sight of his boss escorting 2 soaked children. Sir? Just drive, Ethan muttered. The city outside blurred through raindrops on the tinted windows, street lights melting into rivers of gold. He caught his own reflection in the glass, a man in an expensive suit sitting beside 2 tiny souls who had already lost everything. When they reached the hotel, Ethan arranged a suite for them under his name, ignoring the clerk's raised eyebrows. He handed Emma a small keycard and said quietly, You'll stay here tonight. I'll make arrangements tomorrow. Emma looked at him with the same steady gaze her mother once had. Are you mad at Mommy? The question landed like a blow. Ethan wanted to say yes, to tell her about betrayal, about the pain of being left behind. But when he looked into her eyes, Lily's eyes, the words died. No, he whispered finally. Not anymore. Emma smiled faintly and hugged the letter to her chest. She said you'd say that. Ethan blinked, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Instead, he just turned toward the window, watching the city lights flicker like tiny beating hearts. Sleep now, he murmured. You're safe. Grace called later that night to check in, her voice softer than usual. You did the right thing, Ethan. He didn't reply. Right and wrong felt blurred. All he could see was Lily's handwriting, all he could hear were 2 small voices echoing in his mind. Before dawn, he sat at the edge of the hotel bed, exhausted but sleepless. He stared at his reflection, eyes red, jaw tense, and whispered to himself, What am I doing? For the first time in years, there was no answer. Just the slow rhythm of rain outside, and the faint sound of laughter from the next room, 2 little souls finding warmth in a world that had forgotten theirs. Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? Write yes and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think. Ethan leaned back against the headboard, closing his eyes. A faint smile ghosted across his face, uncertain, unfamiliar. Maybe, just maybe, Lily hadn't left him a burden. Maybe she'd left him a chance. The next morning, sunlight cut through the curtains, soft and golden. Emma and Noah were still asleep, tangled in blankets like kittens. Ethan stood by the window, watching the city awaken. For years he'd ruled it from the top. Now, for the first time, he felt small within it. A knock came at the door. Room service, breakfast. Pancakes, orange juice, coffee. Grace is doing, he suspected. He hesitated before setting the tray down near the children. Emma stirred, rubbing her eyes. Good morning, Mr. Cole. He smiled, barely, and said, It's Ethan. Her grin widened. Okay, Ethan. The sound of his own name from her small voice did something strange to him, something he couldn't name, but didn't want to lose. Outside, the sky was clearing. The city, for once, seemed softer. And somewhere deep inside him, something long frozen began, just barely, to thaw. The morning light poured over Ethan's reflection, revealing the lines he hadn't noticed before, not from age, but from everything he'd refused to feel. He adjusted his tie, out of habit more than need, as if neatness could somehow hold together the pieces that were falling apart inside. Emma and Noah ate slowly, whispering to each other between bites of pancake. Every few minutes, Noah's giggle escaped, innocent and bright. Ethan tried to focus on his phone, but the sound tugged at him like a forgotten melody. "Do you have kids, Ethan?" Emma asked suddenly. He looked up, startled. "No, I don't." She tilted her head. "You should. You're nice, in a quiet way." Ethan's throat tightened around a laugh that never came. He didn't know whether to be offended or moved. Instead, he muttered, "Finish your breakfast." Later, when Grace arrived to take the children shopping for clothes, Ethan stayed behind. He told himself it was to catch up on work, but he ended up staring at Lily's letter again. Each word pulled him deeper into the past he'd sworn never to revisit. He remembered the night she left, the argument that split them apart. Her tears, his anger. The way she'd said, "You don't need love, Ethan. You just need control." And he'd proven her right. But now, with her children sleeping in his care, her handwriting shaking in his hands, control felt meaningless. Grace called later that afternoon. "They're having fun," she said, laughter in her voice. Emma picked a yellow dress. "Noah wants a toy car. They keep asking when you'll come." Ethan froze. "They asked for me?" "Yes, Mr. Cole. Maybe you're not as heartless as you think." The words lingered long after the call ended. He decided to visit them that evening, bringing along a small bag of gifts, things he'd never thought to buy for anyone. A stuffed bear, a puzzle, and a copy of The Little Prince, Lily's favorite book. When he entered the hotel room, the kids ran to him, eyes wide. Noah held up his toy car proudly. "Look! It's red, just like Mommy's." Ethan forced a smile, his heart sinking a little. "She liked red, didn't she?" Emma nodded. "She said red means love. Even if people forget it, it still stays." The words cut deep, but gently. He knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Your mother was very special." Emma looked up at him, searching his eyes. "Did you love her?" He hesitated. The truth felt heavy. "Yes. More than I knew how to." She smiled softly, as if she understood more than a child should. "Then maybe she's not really gone." The room fell quiet. The sound of rain returned, soft against the window. "Would you read to us?" she asked, holding out The Little Prince. Ethan swallowed hard. "Sure." He opened the book and began to read, his voice low and steady. But as he spoke, his vision blurred. Lily's voice echoed in his memory, reading the same words to him years ago, her laughter lighting up the night. When he finished, the children were asleep. He sat there for a long time, just watching them. Something unfamiliar filled the room. Peace, maybe, or the ache of wanting to protect something again. "Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight." Ethan leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. He hadn't realized how much he'd missed the sound of innocence, laughter without agenda, trust without fear. Later, he stepped outside the suite to take a call from his lawyer about a new acquisition. The conversation felt hollow now, like numbers without meaning. "Close it," he said abruptly. "Sir?" "I said close it. We're done here." He ended the call before the lawyer could reply. When he turned back, Emma was standing in the doorway, clutching her teddy bear. "You look sad." He managed a faint smile. "Just tired." She reached up and hugged him, her small arms barely reaching around his waist. Mommy said hugs help tired hearts. Ethan froze, and then, for the first time in years, let himself return the embrace. His chest felt heavy and light all at once. As he tucked the children in again, he whispered under his breath, "Maybe they're not here for me to save, maybe they're here to save me." Outside, the city lights shimmered like tiny stars caught in rain. And inside that quiet hotel suite, Ethan Cole, the man the world called Heartless, finally began to remember what it meant to feel alive. The next few days passed in a strange, fragile rhythm. Ethan still went to his office every morning, but for the first time, work felt distant, like a language he no longer spoke fluently. The spreadsheets, the deals, the meetings, they all blurred together. What he remembered most were the kids' voices echoing in his head, Emma's soft laugh, Noah's endless questions, the way they said his name with warmth instead of fear. By the third morning, Grace found him standing by the window instead of his desk. The city spread below, alive and merciless. She approached quietly, placing a file on the table. "You've rescheduled 3 board meetings, Mr. Cole. People are starting to notice." He didn't look at her. "Let them." Grace folded her arms. "Are you going to tell me what's really going on?" Ethan's jaw clenched. "It's none of your concern." "Those kids are staying at the hotel under your name," she said softly. "That makes it my concern." He turned sharply, eyes dark. "They are Lily's." Grace's breath caught. "Lily?" He nodded once. "She's gone. The children found me." Grace's usual composure cracked for a moment. "Ethan, I'm so sorry." He looked away. "Don't be. Just make sure they have everything they need." Grace hesitated, then said gently, "Maybe what they need isn't things." Her words lingered long after she left. That evening, Ethan visited the kids again. Emma had drawn a picture, 3 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. "This is you," she said, pointing at the tallest one. "And that's us. Mommy said rainbows come after storms." He felt something twist inside him. She was right. Noah tugged at his sleeve. "Can we go to the park tomorrow?" Ethan opened his mouth to say no, to make some excuse about work, but stopped. "Yes," he said quietly. "Tomorrow." The next afternoon, the 3 of them walked through the park, the first sunlight after days of rain. Ethan wore sunglasses to hide how strange it felt, the laughter, the warmth, the eyes of strangers softening at the sight of him holding 2 small hands. Emma pointed at an ice cream cart. "Can we?" He nodded, bought 3 cones, and watched as Noah smeared chocolate across his cheek. For a brief second, Ethan laughed, a real, unguarded laugh that startled even himself. Grace, who had tagged along to keep an eye on things, caught the moment from a distance. She smiled quietly, pulling out her phone and snapping a photo, a memory she knew he'd never admit he wanted. As the sun dipped behind the skyline, Ethan helped Noah tie his shoelace. Emma sat on a nearby bench, humming softly. Everything felt peaceful, ordinary, and that ordinary peace scared him more than any hostile takeover ever had. That night, back in the hotel suite, Emma asked him to tell a story before bed. "I don't know any stories," he said, sitting awkwardly on the edge of the bed. "Then make one up." He thought for a moment. Once there was a man who forgot how to smile. He built towers so high, he couldn't see the people below anymore. One day, 2 stars fell from the sky and landed in his world. They didn't care about towers or money. They just wanted to show him the sky again. Emma's eyes gleamed. Did he learn to smile? Ethan paused, then whispered, "His learning." She smiled sleepily and curled under her blanket. "Good. Mommy would be proud." The words hit harder than she could ever know. He sat there long after they'd fallen asleep, the rhythm of their breathing soothing him in ways silence never could. If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart hash. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't. Outside, thunder rolled again, distant, harmless. Ethan stood by the window, phone in hand, staring at Lily's old contact. He hadn't deleted it all these years. Her name still sat there, like a ghost he couldn't let go. He whispered into the quiet, "They are safe, Lily." And though there was no answer, the air seemed to shift, softer, warmer, almost like a reply. When morning came, Ethan didn't go to the office. Instead, he walked the kids to school himself. Parents glanced his way, whispering. The infamous CEO in a suit, holding 2 tiny hands. He ignored them all. For the first time, he felt like he was walking toward something real. Yet even as hope took root, a shadow followed. A call he couldn't ignore, a truth waiting to resurface, one that could shatter everything he was just starting to rebuild. The call came that evening, just as Ethan was helping Noah build a small tower of Lego bricks on the hotel coffee table. The ringtone cut through the laughter like a blade. He glanced at the screen, an unfamiliar number, but something in his gut told him to answer. "Mr. Cole?" A woman's voice, calm but hesitant. "This is Dr. Reynolds from St. Mary's Hospital. I believe you knew a Ms. Lily Harper." Ethan's hand tightened around the phone. "Yes," he said quietly. "I'm sorry to call you like this," she continued, "but Ms. Harper listed you as her emergency contact years ago. We've been trying to locate next of kin. I just wanted to confirm, you have her children." He looked toward the kids, who were now arguing over which color block was the best. "Yes," he said again, softer this time. There was a pause. "She wanted them to be with you. It was her wish." Ethan felt something twist painfully inside. "When did she?" "A few weeks ago," the doctor interrupted gently. "Cancer." It was fast. "She spoke of you often, even at the end." He couldn't breathe for a moment. His chest felt like it was collapsing inward, the air too heavy to swallow. "Thank you," he managed. When the call ended, he just sat there, phone pressed to his leg, eyes fixed on nothing. Emma noticed first. "Ethan? You look sad again." He blinked, forcing a faint smile. "I'm okay, sweetheart." But he wasn't. Every word from that call rang inside him, Lily's voice echoing from the past, her laughter mixing with the sound of rain and regret. That night, after the kids had fallen asleep, Ethan stepped out onto the balcony. The city lights shimmered below like scattered promises. He thought of all the years he'd spent angry at her, cursing her name, building his empire on the ruins of what they once had. And all that time, she'd been fighting alone. He whispered into the night, "You didn't have to go through it alone, Lily." A faint wind brushed his face, almost like a touch. The next morning, Grace arrived early, noticing the dark circles under his eyes. "You didn't sleep," she said gently. "No," Ethan replied. "She's gone." Grace's expression softened. "I'm sorry." He nodded. "I need to make arrangements. For the kids." "You're keeping them?" He hesitated, then looked toward the suite where Emma and Noah were getting dressed for school. "They have nowhere else." Grace smiled faintly. "That's not why you're doing it." Ethan didn't answer. He didn't have to. Later that day, while driving the kids to school, Noah asked from the back seat, "Ethan, why do people go to heaven?" The question caught him off guard. "Because sometimes, their hearts are too good for this world." Emma glanced out the window, whispering, "Then Mommy's heart must have been really good." He swallowed hard. Yes. It was. Silence settled in the car after that, but it wasn't heavy, it was the kind that carried understanding. That evening, Grace stopped by with paperwork from Child Services. "You'll need to make it official," she explained. "Guardianship." Ethan took the forms but didn't open them right away. He stared at the dotted lines, the spaces for signatures. Commitment. Permanence. Two things he'd avoided all his life. But when Emma ran up to him, waving a school drawing, the three of them under a sun with the words "My Family" written in bold crayon, he felt the last of his resistance crumble. He signed without hesitation. "Be honest, could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply." That night, Ethan tucked the kids in himself. He read another story, kissed their foreheads, and turned off the light. But before leaving the room, he paused by the door. "Good night, Daddy," Noah mumbled sleepily. Ethan froze. It wasn't said on purpose, just a child's slip, innocent and raw, but it pierced deeper than any word ever had. He turned slowly, looking at them asleep, small and safe under the covers. For the first time, the title didn't feel foreign. It felt right. Later, sitting alone by the window, Ethan whispered to the night, "I forgive you, Lily." And somehow, in the quiet hum of the city below, he thought he heard her voice, soft, relieved, free. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, questions, scrutiny, maybe even scandal. But tonight, he allowed himself the one thing he denied for so long. Peace. The days that followed felt almost unreal. For the first time in his adult life, Ethan Cole wasn't running toward something, he was simply being. He still wore his tailored suits, still carried his phone everywhere, but now the notifications didn't control him. His mornings began with laughter instead of boardroom calls, with Emma's hair tangled from sleep and Noah begging for just 5 more minutes. Grace had never seen him like this. "You know," she said one morning, leaning against his office door, "your staff's been whispering. They think you've gone soft." Ethan didn't look up from the coloring book Emma had left on his desk. "Maybe I finally got smart." Grace smiled knowingly. "Smart looks good on you." Still, it wasn't easy. His board didn't share his newfound peace. They wanted the old Ethan, the ruthless one. The one who never said no. At a meeting later that week, one executive sneered, "You're distracted, Cole. Personal issues shouldn't affect business." Ethan leaned back in his chair, gaze sharp. "You're right. But maybe business shouldn't destroy personal lives either." The room fell silent. He ended the meeting early. Back at home, the kids were building a cardboard castle in the living room. Ethan stood there, watching them, a strange ache swelling in his chest. For once, he didn't feel the need to fix or control anything. He just watched. Emma turned, smiling. "Ethan, you can be the king." He chuckled. "I think I've had enough of that title for a lifetime." She grinned. "Then you can be the knight." He nodded, playing along. "A knight, eh? What does a knight do?" "Protects the castle," she said proudly. He paused, looking at her, at both of them, and whispered, "Then I guess that's what I'll be." The simplicity of the moment struck him. After all the years of building towers of glass and steel, he'd finally found something worth protecting, 2 fragile hearts that had somehow chosen him. That night, Grace stopped by with groceries. "You're changing," she said quietly as they unpacked together. "I mean really changing." Ethan smirked. "You make it sound like a disease." She shrugged. "Maybe it's the cure." He fell silent, her words echoing in the dimly lit kitchen. The cure. Later that night, he tucked the kids in again. Emma asked, "Do you still miss Mommy?" He hesitated. "Every day." "She told us once," Emma said softly, "that people who really love each other never stop missing each other, even when they forgive." Ethan swallowed hard. She was right. He sat there a while after they drifted off, his hand resting gently on the edge of their blanket. "If you believe love still wins, comment amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it." The next morning brought an unexpected storm, not from the sky, but from the world he'd left behind. News broke that Ethan Cole, the infamous CEO, had taken in 2 orphans linked to his former fiancée. Headlines spread like wildfire: "Cole's CEO grows a heart. Ethan Cole's secret family. Tragedy turns titan soft." Grace stormed into his office with her phone in hand. "You've seen this?" He glanced at the screen, unflinching. "Let them talk." "But this could ruin you," she warned. "Investors, clients." "Then let it," he interrupted. "If their trust depends on me being heartless, I don't want it." Grace exhaled, her eyes softening. "You're not the man I started working for." Ethan smiled faintly. "Good. That man was lonely." When he returned home, Emma and Noah were watching cartoons on the couch. They didn't understand the noise outside, the gossip, the speculation. All they cared about was whether he'd brought snacks. He did. That evening, while they watched a movie together, Noah crawled into his lap. "Ethan, are you sad?" He looked down at the boy. "Why do you ask?" "Because when people smile with their mouth but not their eyes, it means something hurts." The observation disarmed him. He smiled genuinely this time, brushing Noah's hair back. "Maybe it hurts a little. But it's okay." "Mommy said hurting is how hearts grow," Emma added sleepily. Ethan's gaze softened. "Then maybe mine's finally growing." They fell asleep on either side of him, their small hands curled into his shirt. He didn't dare move. He just sat there, the city lights flickering beyond the window, realizing that for the first time in decades, maybe ever, his heart wasn't made of glass anymore. It beat, fragile and warm, and it belonged not to a company or a legacy, but to them. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the curtains and touched the faces of the children still sleeping on either side of Ethan. He didn't move for a long time. He just sat there, listening to the soft rhythm of their breathing. For years, silence had been his enemy. Now it was peace. When they finally stirred awake, Noah blinked up at him and mumbled, "You didn't go to work again." Ethan smiled. "I think work can wait a little while." Emma stretched and yawned. "Then can we go to the beach today?" He hesitated. The old Ethan would have said no before she finished the sentence. But this new version, the one still learning how to live, nodded. "Let's go." By afternoon, the three of them stood on the shoreline, the waves brushing at their feet. The ocean breeze carried laughter from other families, mingling with the distant call of seagulls. Emma chased the foam as it retreated, her arms wide open. Noah built a lopsided sandcastle and proudly declared it Coal Tower. Ethan laughed, a sound so unguarded that even he didn't recognize it at first. He took off his shoes, rolled up his sleeves, and joined them, helping to carve windows into the sand fortress. As they worked, Emma looked up suddenly. "Ethan, when people go to heaven, can they see us?" He paused, the wet sand cold in his palms. "I think so," he said softly. "And I think they smile when we're happy." She grinned. "Then Mommy's smiling a lot today." That simple statement hit him harder than any speech, any deal, any apology ever could. He looked out toward the sea, blinking against the sun, and whispered, "I hope she is." After sunset, they sat together on the sand, watching the colors fade into gold and violet. Noah leaned against his arm. "I wish Mommy could come back." Ethan brushed a hand through the boy's hair. "She can't. But she left you both something better." "What?" Noah asked, his voice small. "Each other," Ethan said. "And me, if you'll have me." Emma's head tilted, her eyes bright even in the dim light. "We already do." He smiled, a real one this time, and pulled them close as the wind whispered through the waves. When they returned home that night, Grace was waiting outside the building, holding a folder. "You've been approved," she said with a smile. "The guardianship papers. It's official now." Ethan took the folder in silence, running his thumb along the edge. For the first time, the word family didn't feel like a stranger. Grace's eyes softened. "You did it, Ethan. You turned your life into something human again." He exhaled, nodding. Maybe it was never supposed to be anything else. They went upstairs. The kids were already half asleep by the time he tucked them in, murmuring dream words he couldn't quite catch. He lingered by the door, watching them breathe, small chests rising and falling beneath the glow of the nightlight. If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind. One click can be your way of saying, "I felt you." Later that night, Ethan sat alone on the balcony, the city sprawling below like a sea of stars. For the first time, he didn't feel above it, he felt part of it. He took out Lily's old letter again. The paper had grown soft from being folded too many times. He read the last line aloud under his breath. "If you ever find my kids, please don't let them grow up thinking love doesn't exist." He smiled faintly. "You did it, Lily. You brought me back." The wind brushed against his face again, warm this time, almost like gratitude. Down the hall, Emma stirred in her sleep and whispered, "Good night, Mommy." Ethan looked toward her room and whispered back, "Good night, Lily." For the first time in years, his heart felt light, not because everything was perfect, but because he finally understood the truth: love doesn't disappear. It just changes shape, finding new hands to hold, new hearts to heal. Tomorrow would come, and with it, new challenges. But tonight, Ethan Cole, the man once called Heartless, sat beneath a sky full of quiet stars, finally at peace with who he had become. Morning drifted softly into Ethan's apartment, golden light spilling through the curtains like a quiet blessing. The smell of pancakes filled the air, not from the hotel kitchen this time, but from his own. Emma stood on a chair beside the stove, stirring the batter while Noah proudly poured syrup in messy circles on a plate. "You're burning them again," Ethan teased from behind, still in his white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. "No, I'm making them crispy," Emma insisted, frowning in concentration. He laughed, reaching over to flip the pancake before it turned black. "Looks like teamwork saves breakfast again." They ate together at the dining table, sunlight washing over them. Noah's laughter echoed, Emma's chatter never stopped, And Ethan, for once, didn't feel the urge to check his phone, his calendar, or the endless world beyond these four walls. Grace arrived mid-morning, carrying a small plant in a ceramic pot. "A housewarming gift," she said. "For your new home." Ethan raised a brow. "It's the same apartment." Grace smiled knowingly. "No, it's not. It finally has life in it." She was right. The place no longer echoed with emptiness. There were toys on the floor, crayons on the coffee table, laughter in the air. It wasn't sterile anymore, it was alive. After Grace left, Ethan helped the kids get ready for the park. On the elevator ride down, Noah asked, "Ethan, are we your kids now?" He paused, looking down at the boy's expectant eyes. "You've always been mine," he said softly. "I just didn't know it yet." Outside, the day was bright and warm, the kind that made everything feel possible. They sat under a tree in the park, watching kites dance against the blue. Emma leaned against him, her small hand finding his. "You're smiling again," she said. He looked at her and smiled wider. "You make it easy." Later that evening, when the children were asleep, Ethan stood alone in the living room. The city stretched beyond the glass, vast, glowing, alive, but it no longer felt cold. He walked over to Lily's photograph, the one he had once faced down in bitterness. Now, it stood proudly on the shelf beside a family picture Grace had taken at the park. He whispered quietly, "I kept my promise." He turned off the lights and stepped onto the balcony. The sky above shimmered with distant stars. Somewhere, maybe, Lily was watching, proud, peaceful, and free. He leaned against the railing, thinking of everything that had brought him here, the betrayal, the loneliness, the letter, the two small souls who walked into his life and rewrote it without even trying. He thought of the man he used to be, the one who measured worth in profits and power. That man was gone now, replaced by someone imperfect but alive, someone who finally understood that the greatest success wasn't control, it was connection. Down the hall, a small voice called out sleepily, "Ethan?" He turned. Emma stood in the doorway, hair tousled, clutching her teddy bear. "Can you stay until we fall asleep?" He nodded, walking over. "Of course." She climbed back into bed, and he sat on the edge beside her. Noah stirred, mumbling something incoherent before curling closer to his sister. Ethan brushed their hair back gently. "Go to sleep, my little stars," he whispered. "You're safe now." As their breathing evened out, he looked around the dimly lit room, the scattered books, the half-finished drawing taped to the wall, the soft glow of the nightlight, and realized this was what Lily had wanted him to see all along. That love wasn't a weakness. It was the only thing strong enough to rebuild a broken soul. He smiled through the quiet ache in his chest and whispered to the night, "Thank you, Lily, for sending them to me." Outside, a soft breeze stirred the curtains, carrying the faint scent of spring through the room. And in that tender silence, surrounded by the warmth of new beginnings, Ethan Cole, once a heartless CEO, finally found the thing he'd been chasing his whole life without knowing it. Not power. Not revenge. Not redemption.